I want to start today's deep dive with a scenario that I am pretty sure is going to painfully resonate with just about everyone listening.
Oh boy. I feel like I know where this is going.
You probably do. So picture this. It is 4:30 p.m. You have people coming over for dinner at 6:00, and suddenly your house is no longer a home. It is a full-blown crime scene.
Ah, yes. The classic company is coming frenzy.
It's totally a physiological state. You're suddenly staring at baseboards you literally haven't noticed in 3 years. You're aggressively fluffing throw pillows.
Fluffing pillows that definitely do not need fluffing.
Right. You are basically vibrating with stress. You're convinced that if there is a single speck of dust on the coffee table, your entire social standing is going to collapse.
Mm.
And then you walk into the living room, and there is your partner.
And let me guess, he's not vibrating.
No, he is very much not vibrating. He is just sitting there, maybe checking a score on his phone, eating a singular potato chip, totally unbothered. And in that exact moment, you don't just get annoyed, you snap. It is like a dragon just erupts out of your throat.
You yell something like, "Why am I the only one who cares?"
Exactly. Why do I have to do everything? And boom, the evening is totally ruined before the first guest even rings the doorbell.
It's such a universal experience.
It really is. But here is the massive question we are wrestling with today. Is that fight actually about the dinner guests? Is it about the dust on the baseboards? Or is it about a psychological architecture that has been under construction inside you since you were like 5 years old?
That is the core of what we're looking at. And to unpack that, we are diving into a really fascinating, somewhat provocative piece of source material today. It's called The Queen's Code, The Rest of the Story.
By the talent whisperers, right.
Right. And it's essentially the advanced class on the foundational work of Alison Armstrong.
And if you follow this space, you know Alison Armstrong is legendary, sometimes a bit controversial, depending on who you ask, for her takes on male and female dynamics. But this specific text takes a pretty sharp turn from her usual stuff.
It really does. It moves away from the whole men are like this and women are like that framework, and it looks entirely inward. It pivots from analyzing the behavior to analyzing the motive.
Which is our mission for this deep dive. We are trying to decode the hidden internal pressures that fuel relationship criticism. Because we usually think criticism is about the other person. I'm criticizing you because you didn't do the dishes.
But this source throws a wrench in that.
Mm-hmm.
It asks, what if the criticism a woman directs at a man actually starts with an internal judge that she is battling inside her own head?
That is the big shift. The idea that when she yells about the socks on the floor or the lack of help, she isn't really yelling at him. She's yelling at a voice inside herself.
And to really grasp that, we have to backtrack for a second to Armstrong's original thesis. For years, the prevailing wisdom, and it's a pretty charitable one, was that women criticize men because they have an improvement plan.
The renovation theory.
Yes, the renovation project. The idea is that she sees his potential. She wants him to be the absolute best version of himself. So the nagging is actually this weird form of love.
Like, I nag you because I care about your growth.
Exactly. It's benevolent in its intent, even if being on the receiving end feels like, taking a cheese grater to the face.
Right. But the rest of the story says, hold on a second, that is not the whole picture. There is a much darker fuel source at play here.
It suggests that for many women, that drive to have everything perfect, the immaculate house, the flawless plans, the perfectly behaved partner, it isn't about him at all. It is about a crushing internal pressure to just be competent.
And this introduces the main villain of the piece, the character the source calls the internal judge, or the saboteur.
Yeah, and this is not just your standard conscience saying, hey, be a good person. This is a mean, nasty, relentless inner roommate. The text argues that women, in particular, are socialized from a very young age to believe their worthiness is entirely tied to their ability to hold it all together.
So the question, am I a good person, literally becomes synonymous with, is the kitchen counter clean?
Precisely. It builds what the source calls perfectionistic standards. It's this deep-seated belief that you must anticipate every single need, prevent every possible mishap, and never, ever drop the ball.
Because if you do drop the ball, you aren't just a bit messy.
No, you are unworthy. You're a failure.
But wait, let's pause there. Because living like that sounds completely exhausting. Do people even realize they have this judge running the show, or is it mostly subconscious?
That's the insidious part. It is almost completely subconscious until the pressure spikes. It runs in the background, like a computer operating system.
Yeah.
But when the stakes get high, like company coming over, the volume on that internal judge just cranks up to 11.
Okay, so let's run that company is coming scenario again, but through this new lens. It's 4.30. The house is a mess. What is actually happening in her head?
She is under absolute siege. Her internal judge is screaming at her, look at this mess. People are going to see this and they will judge you. They will know you're a total fraud and you can't even manage a simple dinner party.
So she is already in a full-blown fistfight with her own brain before she even sets foot in the living room.
She's drowning in shame and anxiety.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a crucial mechanism the source identifies, which is the spillover effect.
The spillover effect.
Right. That internal pressure, that screaming judge, it is simply too much to contain inside one human body. It has to go somewhere.
And there he is, sitting on the couch, eating a chip.
The nearest, most convenient target. When she sees him relaxing, it triggers a second massive wave of panic. Her brain goes, I am drowning in this pressure, and he's doing nothing. I am completely alone. I'm unsupported.
And that confirms the internal judge's worst whisper, right? The one that says you have to do it all yourself because you aren't worth helping.
Exactly. It validates the deepest fear.
Wow. That puts a completely different spin on the whole situation. So that snap, why are you just sitting there? It isn't really an attack on his laziness. It is a desperate cry for help disguised as an attack.
It is a massive discharge of internal pain.
Mm.
But here is the real tragedy of the situation. He doesn't have the script. He doesn't know anything about this internal judge. All he hears is the attack.
Well, and this brings up a point that I know is going to make some people listening a bit skeptical. I can totally hear someone saying, okay, but isn't this just letting him off the hook? Like, why is he really just sitting there? Why doesn't he see the mess?
It's a very fair question.
The source talks about hypervigilance here, but is that just a fancy psychological excuse for men refusing to clean up?
Nobody's saying he shouldn't be helping. But the source digs deep into the why behind his apparent blindness. It isn't that men are visually impaired. It's that their nervous systems are conditioned or wired very differently when it comes to the home environment.
This gets into the gatherer versus hunter dynamic the text mentions, right?
It does, but it adds a neurological twist to it. The argument is that because women often link the state of the home directly to their survival and their social standing, they develop intense hypervigilance. They're scanning constantly.
Right, so a sock on the floor isn't just a piece of laundry.
To her, it is a signal of disorder. It's a red flashing light.
It's a literal threat to her safety.
Exactly. A threat to her sense of self. Now, you contrast that with the partner, who in the context of this source is the male archetype. He hasn't been socialized to believe his fundamental worthiness depends on the fluffiness of the throw pillows.
So he walks past the sock, and his brain just registers cotton on wood.
It has absolutely zero emotional charge for him. His brain just filters it out as non-essential data. The source contrasts the gatherer focus, which is very diffuse, noticing everything in the periphery, with the hunter focus, which is a single-point focus.
Meaning, if his single point of focus right now is relaxing before the guests arrive,
Then the sock literally does not compute as relevant information.
so we have a total mismatch of perception. But even more dangerously, we have a massive mismatch of meaning.
Huge. To her, the messy room is an existential emergency. To him, it's just Tuesday afternoon.
So she snaps, she unleashes the dragon, but now we have to flip the camera around because relationships are a two-way street. How does this incoming criticism actually land on him? Because I'm guessing he doesn't sit there and think, oh, my poor wife is struggling with her childhood wounds right now.
No, he is definitely not thinking that. His immediate thought is, oh, great, here we go again. I cannot do anything right in this house.
And the source introduces a term here that sounds almost sci-fi, but it is so crucial. Identity activation. I feel like this was the most important concept in the entire document for the person receiving the criticism. Can you break that down?
Sure. Identity activation is this psychological reality where when a chosen partner criticizes you, it doesn't just process as neutral feedback.
A chosen partner, meaning someone you are deeply emotionally intertwined with.
Right. When that specific person criticizes you, it completely bypasses your logic and hits you right in your identity. It feels totally existential.
So you forgot to take out the trash doesn't land as a reminder about a chore. It lands as you are a piece of trash.
That is exactly how it feels. And the reason for this is that just like she has an internal judge screaming at her, he has one too. But his judge is usually whispering a very different set of fears.
What does the male version of the judge typically say?
It usually centers heavily around competence, provision, and worth. It's asking, am I enough? Do I actually provide? Do I matter? Or am I just a failure?
Oh, man. So when she yells, "Why didn't you help me? You never notice anything around here," she isn't just complaining about the chores. She is taking a spear and poking the exact tender spot where his deepest insecurity lives.
She is confirming his judge's worst accusation. His internal voice says, see? She's yelling at you because you are failing. You aren't making her happy. You are profoundly inadequate.
That is just brutal. So she is screaming outwardly because she feels utterly unworthy inside, and he is shutting down and getting defensive because he feels totally unworthy inside.
And that right there is the collision. That is the core tragedy the source outlines. Her internal standard spills outward as harsh criticism, and his internal doubt flares inward as defensiveness and withdrawal.
And what happens next is so predictable. He doesn't look at her and say, "Wow, I feel really inadequate right now." He gets angry. Or he just physically leaves the room.
Which brings us to the protest-withdraw cycle. This is a very classic concept in emotionally focused therapy that the source leans on.
How does that cycle work in this moment?
Well, she protests, meaning she gets loud, she criticizes. She's doing this to try and force a response that will soothe her raging anxiety.
Right.
But he withdraws. He goes silent, or he leaves, to protect himself from the intense pain of feeling like a total failure.
But his withdrawing just makes her panic level skyrocket.
Exactly. Her brain goes, oh my God, he's walking away. He really doesn't care. I really am alone. So she yells even louder.
And then he retreats even further into his cave to get away from the noise that's telling him he sucks.
It is a literal feedback loop from hell.
And the source points out that this specific loop completely destroys emotional safety in the relationship.
It evaporates it entirely. You cannot have real intimacy when your nervous system is in a defensive crouch. If I feel like I have to constantly protect my identity from your judgment, I can't be open with you. I stop being your partner and I just become a manager of your moods.
That makes so much sense. There was also this really fascinating sidebar in the reading about attraction that ties into this. It mentioned that men are very often drawn to self-confident women, but it made a careful distinction. Not necessarily bossy confidence, but women who are at ease. Why is that?
This connects all the dots perfectly. The source suggests that men aren't just attracted to confidence because it's a sexy personality trait. They are drawn to it because it signals safety.
Safety, like physical safety.
Emotional safety. Think about it. If a woman is truly at ease with herself, it means her internal judge is relatively quiet. And if her internal judge is quiet, she isn't going to be projecting all that frantic spillover pressure onto him.
Oh, wow. That is a light bulb moment. So he feels safe with her because she feels safe with herself. He isn't constantly walking around waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Precisely. He can actually relax. He knows he isn't navigating a hidden minefield of her impossible internal standards. He doesn't have to brace for impact every time he enters a room.
Okay, this is incredibly heavy stuff. We have basically diagnosed a situation where two people who genuinely love each other are just mutually triggering each other's deepest childhood wounds over unloading the dishwasher. But the source material does claim we can fix this, right?
We absolutely can.
But the fix starts with a rule that I think is going to be really hard for a lot of people to swallow. The no blame rule.
It is arguably the hardest rule in the book. Because when we're hurting, we want to blame. We desperately want to say, if he just cleaned the bathroom more, I wouldn't act crazy. Or, if she would just chill out, I'd probably help around the house.
But the source says we have to stop that immediately.
You have to stop. This entire framework isn't about figuring out whose complaints are valid. It's about recognizing the hidden machinery operating beneath the argument.
So if we completely strip away the blame, what do we actually do? The text lists several practical, actionable tools. Where should a couple even start?
Step one is what they call naming the judge. You have to drag that internal voice out of the shadows and into the sunlight.
Okay, so in the actual heat of the moment, with the guests arriving in an hour, instead of snapping, what does naming the judge sound like? Give me a script.
It sounds like radical vulnerability, which honestly is terrifying. It means shifting completely away from you statements and using pure I statements.
So no saying, "You never help me."
Right. Instead of that, you take a breath and you say, I am feeling incredibly overwhelmed right now because my brain is telling me that if this house isn't absolutely perfect, everyone is going to think I'm a failure.
Oof. That is really hard to say out loud. That requires taking all your armor off.
It totally does. But think about what that does to your partner's nervous system. If you attack him, his instinct is to defend or flee. But if you reveal your soft underbelly and say, I'm scared I'm failing, his entire biological instinct shifts.
He doesn't feel attacked anymore. He feels needed.
Exactly. You are inviting him to step up and be an ally against your internal judge rather than making him the target of it.
I really like that framing, allies versus saboteurs. But let's be realistic here. In the heat of an argument when your cortisol is spiking, remembering to use a gentle I statement is really difficult.
It takes a lot of practice. And that is why the source emphasizes the simple act of slowing down, just forcing yourself to take one single beat. Ask yourself, is this really about the socks, or is my internal judge currently driving the bus?
The source also mentions this concept of a daily check-in. Now, I have heard of relationship check-ins before, and let's be honest, they almost always devolve into a sterile to-do list meeting. Who is picking up the kids? What's for dinner? How is this version different?
This one is strictly structured to prevent it from becoming a logistics meeting. You each share exactly three things: one stress, one gratitude, and one need. But here is the major kicker. The other person is absolutely not allowed to try and fix it.
Oh, man. That is going to be so hard for the natural hunters out there. They just want to solve the problem and move on.
They literally have to sit on their hands. The entire goal of this exercise is witnessing. It builds the muscle of emotional attunement. You're practicing saying, I see you, I hear you, and I am not trying to manage you or fix you.
It teaches the nervous system that you can share a stressor without it inevitably turning into a massive fight.
Exactly.
Now, we have to talk about the one exercise in this source that made me genuinely sweat just reading about it. The 4-minute eye gazing.
Ah, yes. The dreaded eye gaze. Pretty much everyone hates this idea at first.
4 minutes. Do you have any idea how long 4 unbroken minutes is? That is an absolute eternity to just sit there and stare at someone's face. Why on earth do they recommend torture?
It is pure agony for most modern couples because we are so conditioned to side-by-side living. We watch Netflix together, we look at our phones on the couch, we drive in the car, staring out the windshield.
We're next to each other, but we aren't with each other.
Right, so face-to-face, completely silent connection, it feels incredibly vulnerable and deeply awkward.
Is it just an exercise in tolerating awkwardness, or is there actual physiological science behind this?
It's heavily grounded in nervous system regulation. The science shows that sustained, silent eye contact actually co-regulates your nervous systems. It forces you to stop doing and just practice being.
It breaks you out of that frantic, hypervigilant management mode.
Exactly. It essentially forces your two brains to physically sync up.
So you really just sit there, no talking at all.
No talking. Just looking into each other's eyes. You will probably giggle. You will definitely squirm. You will feel incredibly weird for the first 2 minutes. But usually, right around minute 3, something profound shifts.
The awkwardness just drops away.
It drops, and you suddenly actually see the person sitting across from you again. Not the annoying roommate who forgot to buy milk, but the actual human being you fell in love with.
I guess the logic is, if you can survive 4 minutes of agonizingly awkward silence together, you can probably handle a calm conversation about picking up laundry.
It builds a deep physiological buffer. It reminds your body, not just your logical brain, but your actual body, that this person is a safe harbor.
The last major tool they mention is the weekly appreciation ritual, sharing 3 specific appreciations with each other.
And specific is the operative word there. You can't just say, hey, thanks for being great this week. That is too vague. It bounces right off the brain. It has to be concrete proof that you're actually paying attention to them.
So something more like, thank you for taking the trash out on Tuesday when it was pouring rain because I really didn't want to get my hair wet.
Exactly. It seems almost too small to matter. But what we are doing here is actively retraining the brain's focus.
Because of the hypervigilance.
Right. If you are constantly hypervigilant for dust and mistakes, you will absolutely find dust and mistakes. But if you force your brain to actively scan for what your partner is doing right, you slowly build up this massive repository of goodwill.
Looking at all these tools, it really seems like the core underlying message of this entire deep dive is that the battle is never actually between the husband and the wife.
No, never. The real battle is between the couple as a team and these ancient invisible pressures. The internal judge, the identity activation, the perfectionism, those are the real enemies in the room.
And once you can actually clearly see the enemy, you can finally stand shoulder to shoulder to fight it together.
That is the ultimate transformation.
Yeah.
When he realizes, oh, she isn't attacking my character, she is battling a crushing sense of unworthiness, he can access genuine compassion.
And when she realizes he isn't ignoring my needs, he literally just isn't wired to see this specific danger, she can finally lower her weapons.
It completely turns the relationship from a hostile courtroom into a sanctuary.
A sanctuary where that internal judge just isn't given the microphone anymore.
That is the goal.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought. It's a question drawn from the source material that really stuck with me. It is one of those questions you just have to carry around and let simmer for a few days.
It's a really beautiful question.
Think about this. If you stripped away your internal judge, that relentless voice inside your head that tells you must be absolutely perfect in order to be worthy of love, how would your relationship change tomorrow?
Just imagine the sheer amount of space that would open up. Imagine how quiet and peaceful it could be.
Definitely something to think about the next time you feel the panic rising because company is coming over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure, as always.